Here's a quick constantly queued overview of the Overcast podcast app. It's my favorite app that I've ever downloaded from the App Store, and it was the best use of money I've ever had. Looking at the settings here, you can see the options. Some things to highlight are that you can change your seek duration, so you can seek by 7 to 60 second intervals, and you can also turn on seek acceleration, which means that as you keep hitting that seek button, that seek interval is going to get larger each time. Looking at the bottom, you can see that Smart Speed has saved me 8 hours of playback in the 2 months that I've had the app. I'll show this in a second, and that's one of the biggest features that this has. So if you look at your podcasts and you pick one to listen to, you can see that it shows the album artwork. You can just scroll down on it and shows you all the information and all the show notes. The bottom left, you can do playback options. You can choose what happens when the podcast ends, whether you want to play the next episode or stop listening. And then you can add sleep timer increments of 5 and 30 minutes to get whatever time you want. Now on the bottom right are the effects. You can try the effects on the free version of the app, but they only last for 3 minutes. You can keep turning them on every 3 minutes, but you'll really notice that you want these effects. That's what sells the app. So the Smart Speed option here shortens silences. What this means is anytime someone stops, or there's a pause or a break in a podcast, it automatically skips that, fast forwards through it seamlessly. You don't even notice it. It saves you a ton of time, and that's what saved me my 8 hours in 2 months. That's huge. I wouldn't recommend it if you're listening to a musical podcast because it skips the pauses in the music, so you might want to turn it off for those. But for anything where there's people talking, it's awesome. The voice boost here is another big feature. It boosts the sound of the podcast, so if you're listening through your phone speakers, you get a little bit more bang for the buck out of your speakers. But the biggest part for me is the voice equalizer. Lots of podcasts are conversations between multiple people, and some people are on Skype, and some people are on the phone, and some people are in the same room, so they're all at different audio levels. This puts everybody at the same volume, which is huge, because I listen to the podcast at work, and you always have to have your podcast as loud as the quietest person on it, and then some people are too loud and distract people around you. Here, everybody's the same volume. It sounds great. There's a speed slider down here. It has a lot more options than Apple's default podcast app, so you can really find the sweet spot for the speed of the podcast that you want to listen to. Now at the bottom, you can choose that for this show, you can always use the last effects that I've used set here, so I can have show specific if I choose this, or I can use the last effects, which means that whatever the last podcast I listened to was, it'll keep those effects. So if you go back here, you can look at creating playlists in here. There's a lot of options if you're into that. And then you can also search new podcasts. They give you these starter kits, which are different categories. If you're into something, if you want to listen to public radio, it's going to show you some top public radio podcasts to choose from. Otherwise, you can search for whatever you want. Just type in podcasts, search it, and you'll see what shows up. So you can find pretty much any podcast that auto updates. So that's a quick look at the Overcast app. If you want to buy it, I think the full version with all the effects is $5, and it is totally worth it. It's the best experience I've ever had listening to podcasts. The Smart Speed and the voice equalizer are amazing. I'll never try anything else. It's the only way to listen to a podcast. When you try these 3-minute segments of those effects, you'll realize how important they are and how much you really need them if you're an avid podcast listener.